I'm not recording the video.
Oh,
It's
okay,
just all
cool.
audio. So no,
Okay.
yeah, I've had people stress out about, oh, but what do I wear? No, 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 guys, it's okay.
No, I
I'm not that
think my
fancy.
wife just didn't want you to see the mess, you know?
I
So, yeah.
understand that. I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. Hello, I'm Ken Kinsley, and this is Finding the Words, the only podcast devoted to text-based art and artists. When Indianapolis-based multi-disciplinary artist Nathaniel Russell says on the About the Artist page on his website, "I try to make work accessible and available to people who are interested," he isn't kidding around. In addition to his paintings, sculptures, and woodblock prints, he also does murals, books, and commercial design projects, as well as concert posters for Fish and the National. And that's just the visual art end of his practice. He's also a musician and has several albums out, including his most recent, titled Songs of, which was released last May. I was pleasantly surprised that with all of that, he could fit me into his schedule to talk about his current two-person show with Lori Damiano, Foot Chorus at Minnow Arts in Santa Cruz, California, the evolving role of drawing in his work, and the role that art and music play as an extension of life. Here's my chat with Nathaniel Russell. So it's not unusual for someone to be a hyphenate, but you seem to be hogging up all the hyphens for yourself. um, you do prints, music, drawing, paintings, murals, sculptures, posters, books, commercial design. You even did the animation for your music video. Uh, do you make
Yeah.
any distinction between these pursuits?
I feel like I used to try to, but I feel like
Yeah.
that was like, I think I was kidding myself a little bit, and I think it was like a detriment to the work to keep things divided or compartmentalized or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's all the same thing, and it's a lot easier to see the connections between like a drawing to a mural than maybe it is to see like to music or video or something. But
Mm-hmm.
everything's based on it's all coming from the same water spigot, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
it's it's all one thing at this point.
Mm-hmm. Did you always see yourself becoming an artist?
Um, I don't remember that far back. I do know that it was I can't really remember being that interested in any other kind of profession, or like a way to make a living or something, Like it's always been, I think maybe when I was in elementary school, I was like, I want to be a scientist, but I don't know what that meant. But I think I was always interested in like cartoons. I thought it'd be cool to be to have a comic strip or
Mm-hmm.
do advertising or something like that. So it's always been in that realm of just something that I was kind of interested in and um, liked doing, you know.
Mm-hmm. And was there any sort of defining moment that once you went into this field that made you say, yeah, this is where I'm headed?
Um, I mean, the, I was always interested in it, so I was just always doing it. And I think the more you do something, obviously, like the more you find yourself, the more you're better at it. And I took all the my art my high school had a lot of art classes, so I was like taking all the art classes, and I
Mm-hmm.
got like a small scholarship from my high school to go to college because of art stuff. And it's just like, all right, well, this is what's being laid out before me. But I also think there's also just kind of like a point of no return where it's kind of too late for me to do anything else at a certain point. And I
Yeah.
don't know when that point was. And I've thought about it lately, like, what else could I do? Do I need to get a job or something, But I think it's too late for me. But I do think that, like, I don't know, 10
Yeah.
years ago or something was maybe the point of no return where it's like, I better keep going at this because that's my best shot, you know?
You're a lifer now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
too late for me. Save yourself.
And you're a native Indianan. Is that how you say if
Right.
somebody's from Indiana? I never actually thought about
Hoosier.
that.
Hoosier.
Hoosier. Okay. I mean, I know I've heard that before, but I didn't realize. Okay. So you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
And you went to Ball State for printmaking,
Yeah.
but you had a lot of back and forth between Indianapolis and the San Francisco Bay Area, where you'd lived for several years.
Yeah. I lived there for 10 years or so. Um,
How'd that connection come about?
well, after college, I kind of, I didn't really know what to do. I
Yeah.
I wasn't done doing things or making things or working on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I knew about this printmaking center in Berkeley called Kala, Kala. Um, and one of my college professors had told me about it, and I knew it was a place where you could go and kind of, you know, pay to work there, and they offered fellowships and classes and stuff. And I had a few friends that lived out there that I knew I could sleep on their couch for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of used that Kala printmaking center as just an excuse, like I'm just going to go do this because then I'll have something to do. And when I get out there, I just need to find a
Mm-hmm.
job and a place to live. And that's what happened. And I think I just kept going to the printmaking center. I ended up teaching some classes and workshops there. They had this beautiful old Vandercook letterpress there and all
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful type and furniture. It was a beautiful machine and like nobody used it really. So I took one class on how to, set type and how to print linoleum cuts or things on there. Um, and at the time, I was working at a record store, and my friend who I worked at the record store with wanted to start putting out 7 inches. And the first one he did was mine, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to make all the art, and I can make it. You don't have to get it printed." Like, I was really into making things by hand and on the letterpress. So
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy to think about now. We made 500 copies of like each 7 inch, which seems insane. It's probably stupid then,
Wow.
but it seems really insane now. But yeah, I would just like cut linoleum blocks and set type and like print 500 copies of this thing. And I did
Wow.
that probably 10 or 15 times and would also use it to print posters
Mm-hmm.
and other stuff. And I mean, it was a nice little beautiful collection of stuff. We made $0 on it. But after a while, I think the people who ran the center were like, "Oh, he's the only person who does this," and we hear him printing a lot of stuff there. So I started teaching a workshop about how to use the machine and um, how to. It was like letterpress printing for artists. So it wasn't so much about like the craft of typesetting and that because that was not my
Mm-hmm.
strong suit. Try to figure out how to make these things work for whatever you wanted to do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, long story, but yeah, so I just stayed, and that's what happened. I moved to California, stayed on my friend's couch for a few months, got a job, started just making art all the time, like to going at the printmaking center and hanging out with friends, playing music, and it just kind of snowballs into like
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're doing all the time, and that's the rest of your life. And I'm not complaining. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
It's
That's
a
very
good thing
cool.
to do with yourself forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds like a very like tight knit community in Kala and in that space there.
I think it was. I mean, mostly the tight knitness was like it was my circle of friends, and I was really really
Mm-hmm.
lucky. Like from working at the record store and just stumbling into this house that I lived in, um, to make some lifelong friends who are many of them are like creative like geniuses. They're like incredible
Mm-hmm.
musicians, incredible artists, and just being around them and that energy kind of circled. I struggled at Kala a little bit because the kind of work that I was interested in, the kind of work that I was making was like it wasn't necessarily like fine art printmaking. I wasn't making like large photorealistic etchings, and I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
focused on the craft of you know engraving or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to use these. So I don't. I made some friends there, but mostly it was I kind of just sort of skirted around, but then kind of I think after a while they took me a little more seriously. But yeah, mostly it was just my little friend group that just would slowly expand. You're in this little, it's a small pond over there, too. It's
Hmm.
like it's a fertile zone, but there's like 100 people doing cool stuff, and you're kind of
Hmm.
all at the same, dinner party or art show or something, and you end up just kind of getting into stuff. But yeah,
Very
I
cool.
lived there for like 10 years, kind of Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco, around there, and then I came back here just for family stuff and ended up just staying, but going back a lot.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. And how similar are the two art communities between the Bay Area and Indianapolis? Is there a,
um,
more of a tight knit
I don't know.
group there, I
I
would
don't know
think?
that. I mean, my life is so much different now, and I'm
Sure.
older, and I have a family,
Hmm.
um, and but I have friends that are amazing artists and amazing musicians. But I'm not, you know, I'm not kind of as in the mix here as maybe I once was.
Hmm.
But there's stuff happening, and I think most importantly here it's always been a place where you make it happen. Like you can't really
Hmm.
wait for someone to come and like tap you on the shoulder. Like you want to there's places where you can like book your band, or you could rent out a space to make an art show, or or do something. But it's I think a lot of it is really self motivated, and which I've always been into. You know,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
I don't
and
go
and
ahead.
your artwork and you personally, just you have a very chill vibe, and but you're so prolific that it kind of leads me to think that you're constantly out there hustling. Is it? It seems kind of stressful. Is that hard to kind of reconcile those two
I mean, I think
competing?
the chill vibe is a total front. I mean, I'm pretty stressed out and freaked out all the time. But I don't necessarily. I think if my work is about anything, it's maybe about dealing with that in a way
Mm-hmm.
that I want to be. It's like, you know, there's ambition to be chill someday. Um,
Uh-huh.
but but I think the one thing, I'm not going to say that I'm like a practiced musician or I have the best technique or craft or anything. Far from it. But I think the one thing that I have going for me is I just do things. Like I'm
Hmm.
that's kind of something I feel it's like a feel like I have to do things, do something. Don't I'm not a very patient person. And I don't like to wait. Yeah, I just don't like to wait around, and um I like to get into things. So whether
Hmm.
it's um just cold calling people and asking, "Hey, do you want to do something together?" Or, "Hey, do you want to set up art show?" Or, "Hey, can I think it's or just doing stuff by myself in my basement. I feel like it's a way that I can deal with being stressed all the time.
Hmm.
You know?
I,
Um,
I get it. I get it. I think
yeah,
everybody's like that right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think now is a great uh, opportunity to figure out how to deal with a lot of these things. Like, what is the work about, and how do we get through the day and hope for change? And it's something I think about all the time. Like you
Hmm.
don't want to be like, oh, there's like a meme, right? There's like a meme of like a city on fire, and like somebody's like, "Hey, anybody want to buy a painting?" And
Yeah.
like that that's a real feeling, man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think there's room for everything, and I feel like making some thoughtful, soft work in this or energy in this world is there's a place for that. And
Hmm.
I think it's yeah.
And you have a very clear and distinct style, but you also have this kind of wanderlust in terms of the methods that you create. The painting, the wooden cutouts, or prints, or drawings, or more traditional
Right.
paintings on canvas. What compels you to move from one mode of creating to the next?
I think it's I think it's just mood or impulse. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I get asked, like someone will say, "I really like your your cutouts, your painted cutouts. Can we do a show of that?" I'll say, "Yes," and I'll just and I'll make those.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it really is based on I I don't often have like just free studio day to do whatever you want. It's
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually have a purpose or or some kind of direction in the back of my head of like what needs to be done, what I'm interested in. And because I do like freelance illustration and commercial work, I try to fit in. Maybe sometimes people are disappointed because they come to me to do a job for them and I'm like, but I'm really into doing woodcuts right now. So this job that maybe you saw that was a drawing is now going to be a woodcut. But the thing that connects it all for me is drawing,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever line that I have is in there. And
Mm-hmm.
drawing's always been really, really important to me and the basis of so many things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's even just trying not to draw, that's just it's in there. And I think if there is a unifying thing in there, it's that hand and that line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but but there's often times where I'll just have an idea for, oh, this would be a great like a wheat paste assemblage thing, like a photocopy wheat pasted onto a board, and I just sort of I just I try to find opportunities to be able to follow that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm very lucky in the sense that like I do get asked to do things, so I have these opportunities. Well, I got asked to put a piece in this show, so I'm going to make this new thing that I'm really excited about. I like
Mm-hmm.
things to be really fresh and I want to be excited about them while I'm making them.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the drawing. You've also gotten back into blogging again lately, and
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago.
yeah,
Dude,
yeah,
I'm
they're good.
trying
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out like it's been, I started doing a blog like 2005 or something.
Mm. Oh
I
well.
feel like that was like such a cool creative like just outlet like practice for me. It started
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know how to make a website, but I could blog into Blogspot or whatever. And I just did it every day and it would post drawings and it was casual. But then like I felt a connection with people through it. And I missed that feeling because through having a family and responsibilities and wherever my head was, I just that wasn't a part of my practice anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And other practices that came in. But
Mm-hmm.
I think like a lot of people have become very disillusioned with like social media and
Mm-hmm.
how we connect with viewers and other humans. And I'm trying to like make a new headquarters for myself that is not linked to like a big tech corporation. So it's like, okay, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
try to like, and it's still in the early stages, but I'm going to try to make a website and I'm going to try to make a new blog where I can just get this. If I was thinking about posting on Instagram, I'll just do it there where I can write more and just get those muscles working again of like how to write and articulate things. And I mean, literally, I was talking with someone about this 2 days ago about like what's the best way to organize things and um, trying to take it really seriously. I mean, that's a very involved side note to what you were talking about, but it's like, uh, yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. And I was just thinking, I was like, I'm going to do one today, like how to
Mm-hmm.
drive people to like some sort of headquarters where you can, if you want to, there's no one forcing you, and there's certainly no
Mm-hmm.
algorithm putting it in front of you. That it's
Sure.
like, if you want to know what I'm thinking about, you want to know what I'm working on, do you want to buy something? Do you want to know what's coming up? There's a place to do it. It's like an old school TV channel rather than like
Mm-hmm.
whatever Netflix is promoting that day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't
Nice.
know. I'm trying, man. We'll
Well,
see.
well, one of the posts that you were talking about drawing, and you were talking about the difference between making a drawing and just the simple act of drawing with no plan. Um,
Right.
which do you prefer? Which do you usually
I
do?
think. I mean, they both have. They both are great and both are frustrating.
Hmm.
I usually sit down. I'm like, I'm going to draw this. I have an idea what I'm going to draw, and I start from there. And it gets frustrating when it's not what you want it to be. But then you can sort of get into the process, and 10 drawings later, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to be, but it's better, and it's led to
Mhm.
that. And I do some of my favorite drawings that I do is I'm I have two kids, and
Mhm.
I make little notes for their lunches every day. And it's usually just like little,
Nice.
just a drawing, but like
Sure.
it's goofy stuff, like a penguin drinking coffee, or a chicken playing guitar. But like just those things is like that's been my daily practice, and we have like
Mhm.
hundreds of them at this point. And I'm just and I go through those again, and I'm like, man, these are when you're not thinking, when you're just doing
Yeah.
it because you have to get it zipped up because you're late and you got to get in the van. It's like that feels so cool, and it's
Mhm.
like when you can surprise yourself, or like the defenses come down, a little bit of something gets out in spite of
Mhm.
yourself. Like that's when you transcend a little bit, and you can transcend by drawing a chicken, or you can transcend by singing the opera. It's like it's both coming from the same thing, I think. And I've been trying to do that a little bit more, like rediscover some creative practices that have sort of fallen by the wayside in my life. Like somehow I saw my sketchbooks go from drawings, like life drawings, like I'm on the BART train, or
Mhm.
at the coffee place, or like thumbnail sketches, to like it would slowly just become more words, and then it's like shopping lists and
Hmm.
ideas and titles, until like my sketchbook is all just words now. So I'm trying also to like, okay, not instead of anything, but also just do some drawing today as well, just to like
Mhm.
let that energy flow.
Do those words and phrases lead to images or?
Yeah, I think so. Like I have a list of titles and lists of
Mhm.
like, uh and they're I mean, in some ways they're prompts,
Mhm.
but they're also like spaces to fill. It's like here's the title of, like, if you're going through a thrift store looking at the spines of the DVDs or something, it's like
Mhm.
here's the title, and I want to color that in, and I get very inspired um, I guess illustrating, for lack of a better word, like those titles, and giving those words like a bit of a context and a shape to live in, or a balance, or a juxtaposition with something that sort of get creates some tension or questions, or some comments, some kind of more holistic feeling, I guess.
Mhm. Were you always putting words in with your artwork or?
No, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think so. I mean, I always liked it. I mean, I loved, like, growing up, I was so into like the Far Side, and like
Yeah.
those comics, and like there's always text, and like I was into comic books. I was really into like advertising and logos, like skateboard
Mhm.
magazines and records and stuff. And but that wasn't really something that I did a lot, like when I was studying, like in art, like in figure drawing class, or in silkscreen class or whatever. It wasn't really something that was done a lot, and I don't think I'd really been exposed to work that really did that. That wasn't like an illustration of something,
Mhm.
like you're illustrating a poem or a book. I had a printmaking professor who's one of my favorite artists, and a huge figure for me, sort of shaping an outlook. But he used to do these big woodcuts, like portraits and
Mhm.
landscapes, and of around the town, and he would put the title like in the background, like kind of behind, so you could barely see the
Oh.
letters, but you could kind of see them. So if it was like two of his students, right, that he would draw from life and make a beautiful woodcut out of, and like let's say the print was called Two Dummies or something, it would just say like Two Dummies
Too
big,
dummy.
but like, and I really liked, it was kind of like it was subtle, but there was like I liked that way of introducing it. And I think like anybody, I think it happens a lot in art schools. Like people start like imitating their professor if they're into their work, you
Hmm.
know. And I definitely did a little bit of that. And I think as I moved along and saw others examples of like people that use text and letters, um, I gave myself more permission to do that and got really interested in it.
And you work predominantly in printmaking, but for your current two-person show, Foot Chorus, with
Yeah,
Lori Damiano at Minnow Arts in Santa Cruz, you're
yeah,
showing about 20 of what you call paintings slash drawings. How would you
yeah.
describe the process on that?
Uh, Again, it was one of those things. I mean, a lot of it comes from practicality too. Like,
Hmm.
there's things that I love about printmaking. Number one thing that I love, well, the top two things I love about printmaking is like it's a process, right? And
Sure.
you're drawing your idea, you're like running it through this filter of the process. And there's a little bit of a loss of control, and it's a little bit superhuman, but a little bit of like a simplification too. And I just love that process of seeing something come out that's not just all me. There's this process in it. The other part of it is I can make a ton of them. So
Sure.
it's like, oh, I can give all my friends a print. I can send 100 copies of this print into the world rather than just sell like one little painting and never see it again. You know, I love it. It's like it's the democratic medium. It's something I
Hmm.
really love about it. But uh, for this art show, and Lori and I had been in conversation, but we're both tied up in our little worlds, and we are in our heads, and we maybe wouldn't talk, and then we would talk, and we wanted to come up with these like really ambiguous ideas and themes, and then we just kind of ended up just making our own work and seeing how that fit together. And it's like you said, I really wanted uh, to draw on paper, and I wanted to have like a something that was kind of rough and raw and like had a tooth to it. And um, so I had a big roll of paper that I stapled, and I just rolled like house paint on it, let it dry, got it real nice and stiff, did another thing, and then I took it down and I cut it up into like even sized pieces of paper. And it has that thickness. It's like more than paper. It's like, and there's parts where I didn't get the paint quite right. And if you just draw on that with graphite, the pencil breaks, or you can kind of dig into it a little bit.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to make these like primitive looking, almost like cave painting-y kind of, to draw as little as possible. And most of those were definitely coming from a place of like where I think about those lunch drawings, where I'm just like, I'm just going to start drawing this thing. I want to draw a duck
Hmm.
or a skull. And then I would sort of look at them and think, because they all have captions, they all have words on them. And I
Hmm.
would just think about, I guess this was an instance of like, some of them I already had titles for, and some of them I just like, what does this one need to be called? What is this saying? And it was kind of
Hmm.
an even with those. And then I made some other pieces that were larger, like 18 by 24, and those were photocopy like manipulations. Like I would go to the copy shop with drawings or like books
Hmm.
and just photocopy them and move them and just blow them up and shrink them down and then just tear them up, wheat paste the heck out of it. And I think, yeah, and I really love on both of those things. I just sort of I put like a clear coat, like a poly coat on top of them, because it just like seals it in and makes it's almost like an industrial thing, you know? It's
Hmm.
like whatever fragile or delicate was going on in there is just like glazed in, and it's not going anywhere. It's kind of like frozen there. Um, but as far as like, I didn't have a master plan on what I was going to make. I
Hmm.
didn't. And when Lori invited me to do it with her, we've known each other for a little while, and I love her work, and I think she knew what probably I could probably pull it off, you know. So,
Hmm.
and the people at Minnow Arts they're just there to support the arts, you know, and they just want to give us a space to do what we want to do. So
Mhm.
I'm going out there next week,
Hmm.
this week. We're going to do a little closing artist reception, and I'm making a little zine for it and of some of our work
Cool.
and a little poster. Neither one of us were really able to go for the opening just because of you know life.
Hmm. Sure.
We're we're,
Sure.
we're looking forward to hanging out
Very cool.
this week. Yeah,
Yeah. And most of those works, they have, as you said, it's kind of a more delicate feel in the line work than the kind of, solid graphic forms of the prints. But in something like, there's one in the beginning where there's a skull.
yeah,
It's kind of in a, like inside of a little hole, or like there's something around it
yeah.
that still packs quite a punch.
I,
Right.
I, 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 you know what? Thanks for noticing. I appreciate it. I feel like, I mean, I get to talk about art and stuff a lot, but I don't, I feel like, I don't know. There's not a
Mhm.
ton of sort of specific, detailed questions about
Yeah.
pieces, but no, it's like, I love, that's the thing I love about drawing is also just like trying to stop myself and just being
Hmm.
like, thinking
Hmm.
like roots, like cave painting, what's the line? What's the most you can say with the least amount of line
Hmm.
or words or something? And that's really interesting to me. Just like leaving a lot of room for people to fill in the blanks or put their own thing on it. And I would say one of the most exciting things about it to me is that it's such a mystery to me too. I mean, I'm not.
Hmm.
I like thinking about what that could mean or in what way that relates to my life that it wouldn't relate to others. Um,
Are
but
are your pieces in the show kind of in conversation with each other, or, I mean, I guess if you put a music metaphor, is it a concept album, or is it like a collection of singles?
you know,
And there's
I
nothing wrong
think
with a collection of singles, by the way. You don't
no,
have
but
to
it's
be
funny that you
70s
say that
prog
because
rock.
I've always thought about my art shows as records in a way to like
Hmm.
take the
Hmm.
pressure off. Like I think there's a lot of pressure people can put on themselves. Like this has to be my masterpiece. This has to be like my defining
Hmm.
show. But if I just say, oh no, this is like my acoustic album, and this is like when I did disco for this record, like it leaves
Yeah.
it leaves more space to just be not so precious about
Yeah.
stuff,
Just
which I
roll
really
with it.
dig. And I
Yeah.
think these are definitely, it's like a meeting in a church basement. Like everybody's there for a reason, but they may not know each other. That's what each of
Hmm.
these pieces are. They're all there for this reason, and but they're starting conversations with each other. Maybe
Hmm.
I don't think there's a direct link from piece to piece, but definitely the fact that they were all made in a really small period of time with the same materials, with the same destination. I feel like, yeah, they're of this time or of this same egg.
Hmm. And on Instagram recently, you were talking about an idea for a mural, because you do have quite a few murals out there. You said, "I want people to scream, 'My kid could do that from blocks away.'" Do you find do you find that some people have a problem with your work, or
I mean, I've heard it
are
before,
people just being
but
super uptight, or what? Because
people that have my sympathies, like
yeah.
they don't sort of. I still think weirdly in this day and age, it's like there's these requirements for people to. They think art should meet a certain criteria of
Mhm.
technological achievement, or when really it's like, you know, some of my favorite music sounds terrible. It's like, and I think that's like it's like a classic thing. Like, uh, my kid could do that, and there's no comeback to it. There's
Mhm.
nothing. It's like the
Right.
only reaction that I have or anything is like I don't know that there's ever been an example. But I've dealt with that. I've dealt with that in different ways, like trying to make work that I'm interested in more academic settings
Mhm.
is often looked down on, or has been looked
Mhm.
down on, or
Mhm.
criticized, or
Hmm.
oh, it's graphic arts, it's illustration, it's a woodcut, not a painting. There's all these different arbitrary rules of like what's high and low, but there's never been an example that I can think of where someone has said that's not art and it's worked out
Hmm.
for them. Like that's
Well,
never
uh,
been the case. I mean, I can't think of any because
yeah.
there's somebody out there for everything. And yeah, and I love doing things at a this big and very large. I think
Hmm.
that's such a cool thing to be able to do. And I would like to do big things. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I do love doing simple drawings, just a couple lines. Like I'm sure people look at my work in the show and that's a crappy drawing, man. And I mean, by some yardsticks, it probably is, but that's not the point, you know.
Right.
And or it's there's that story, of Picasso sitting at the cafe. Some lady says, "Hey, can you draw on this piece of picture for me?" Or you draw on this piece of paper. Does 30 seconds. Does this beautiful portrait of a chair or a lady or whatever. And he's like, "All right, it's $500 or whatever," he said. She's like, $500? This took you 30 seconds. You're charging me $500? He's like, "No, it took me my entire life to be able to do this in 30 seconds for
Hmm.
you."
Hmm.
And that's a cool, like, smart ass story, and there's some truth to it. But I think what it comes down to is like the criteria is only does it work or does it make you
Yeah.
does it work or does it not? And
Hmm.
that's really all that matters. All that
Hmm.
matters.
You also brought up illustration, and you have a seriously impressive list of concert posters.
Oh, thanks.
Fish, Sylvan Esso, Andrew Bird with Iron and Wine, Dinosaur Jr., Real Estate, The National. How did this part of your portfolio come about?
I mean, I love doing posters, but it started
Mhm.
working at. I mean, I love music. I've worked at a couple
Mhm.
different record stores in my life, and half the people that work there are musicians, or half the people that come in are musicians, or
Mhm.
half my friends are musicians. And it's like, hey, can I make your poster? Will you make my poster? And it starts from there, and you just
Mhm.
keep doing them, and then someone you don't know calls you up, and
Mhm.
I don't do as many as maybe I used to, but I kind of just got back into it in the last couple of years, actually. And
Mhm.
I just really a lot of fun, and I really dig it, and it's just another opportunity to get weird with something or try something
Mhm.
out and be so precious about it. I do try to get away with things, like try to, especially when it comes to like band T-shirts or posters. I try to sneak in some things that I think are not silly or ridiculous, but also have an undeniable like graphic impact or something.
Mhm.
And I think that's the stuff that works the best and stuff that is
Mhm.
exciting to me. But yeah, it all comes from again self motivating or DIY, like making 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 posters for your friends or for people that
Mhm.
come in the record store or saw your stuff somewhere.
Mhm.
And some
How
of the
how do
most
you
satisfying ones I've done are for my buddies. Those are the ones
yeah
I still look at.
how do you determine the subject matter on the posters? Are you listening to the band's music and just go get your inspiration from there, or do
I
they
find that
request
really hard.
stuff?
I mean, I find that really hard to do. Like,
Hmm.
I don't really want to illustrate people's songs, and I don't.
Hmm.
There's usually like I'm not the hippest guy, but I usually have an idea of what people's vibe is or what will work. Um, and there's usually some direction, like for those Iron and Wine things that you were talking about. It's very much about this duo of Andrew Bird
Hmm.
and Iron and Wine and how they were traveling together and there's usually like a brief of some kind, but
Hmm.
oftentimes it's like do whatever you want, and those are the best. Those are those
Hmm.
are those. But I do love assignments, and I love trying to problem solve and figure things out. And there are some that turn out really good on the first try. It's like, oh, I will usually be like, hey, here's three ideas, and sometimes they're like, that's the one, we're done, and I'm just like, yes, great,
Hmm.
because I think it does capture a cool energy. And there's some where it just gets dragged out for weeks and weeks, and every art director has to have
Mm.
their note on it, and that could get tedious and tiresome. And I do think it loses a little bit of the energy, and it loses a little bit of um, spontaneity that way. But
Mhm.
that's the gig, and it's a cool
Mhm.
gig.
And I'm assuming I know you do your own posters. Is that easier or harder to do a poster for your own music? I would imagine easier. Or is it just not even feel like
Um, you know, I don't play that
it's,
many shows, so it's not
yeah.
that difficult. Like I don't, but no, it's fun. I mean, it's
Yeah,
because
sure.
there's only one person
Hmm.
who's looking at it. But when it, those are sometimes the ones I'm least happy with because I do feel like
Mm.
it's it's so closely identified with like me or something,
Hmm.
like or it's
Hmm.
hard. Sometimes it's hard to put into visual. I guess I never really thought about that before. It's hard to put into visual terms what I'm doing, like with music or something. I
Because
find that I find that difficult. Like I struggled with some album covers of mine, and there's one in particular. I'm like, why did I do that? And then some. And honestly, this last record that I did is kind of the one of the only ones that had my actual like a print or artwork on it. The other ones that I've done have been like found photographs or just lettering or something like that. But yeah, I do
yeah.
find that a little difficult. Partially, I think because of I don't want to define it any more than it already is.
Hmm.
For me, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't thought
Yeah.
about it that much. But I enjoy making those posters because I know what the aesthetic is. I know what I want it to look like.
Hmm.
Um, it's
And
fun.
your music and your overall art, they both really mesh together. They really seem like the same person is doing this.
Well, that's very kind of you. I appreciate that. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like I'm not the most accomplished musician. I'm not the technically adept by any means. But again, if I'm going to walk the walk, I know that's not important. I know that's not the most important thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like once I gave myself permission to let those two overlap a lot more with like titles of work, titles of drawings that can now be song lyrics or song lyrics that can
Mm.
now be titles of drawings. Like once I started mixing those together and realizing it's kind of all the same thing and it doesn't if I mess up it doesn't matter, like
Hmm.
there's not going to be like some official from music who comes in and says you're not supposed to redo that, you're not supposed to say that,
Yeah.
there's these arbitrary things that you have in your head, or at least I do, of these arbitrary rules that just don't make any difference whatsoever.
Hmm.
So you might as well just explore.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
your newest album was you put that out last May. It's
Yeah.
titled
Yeah.
"Songs of Nathaniel
Yeah.
Russell," and you had Amelia Meath from Sylvanesso producing. And you had a really interesting concept for it that spurred the project. Can you tell us a little bit about that? You
Um,
talked about this a little bit
well,
on Bandcamp, I think.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was essentially like I've made up songs and played music for, I don't know, 20 years or something. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe longer. And there were some over the years that I just sort of kept playing that kept stuck around. And then I had a family. I had two little kids, and I used to play music to them every night, and I used to play music around my house. And these older songs, just those are the ones I remembered. I don't have a good memory for. I
Mm-hmm.
can't play a Beatles song. I don't have a good memory for other people's lyrics really. It was like this batch of like 10 or 15 that kind of kept coming that I kept playing, and I realized thematically, lyrically, and just like the tone, they kind of fit together. And maybe with changing some words around or moving things around, I could see how they still resonated with me in a way that they hadn't before. And it wasn't like a concept album, but it was like, again, I gave myself permission. It's like there's some new songs on here, but
Hmm.
there's also songs that I made up 20 years ago. So why there's not I could put those together on a record
Hmm.
because they fit together to present as a work. And I'm not going to get in trouble for that,
Right.
you know. And Amelia and I have been friends for a while, and she was very supportive and very generous in helping me make this record and supporting it and collaborating. And it was such a gift, you know. I mean, it's like an
Hmm.
embarrassment of riches in a way to have someone that I like so much, that I respect so much, who's so skilled and talented in that way, sort of help me make this thing in a way that I couldn't if I want it on my own. And I think the record, the songs are so much more because she's involved and because of the people that she brought into the record and the experience. It's so much more
Hmm.
special and better because it's more open.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
I've seen where you've said that relationships and mutual support aren't just essential, but they're also the reward. And that really sounds like it's the case on this record.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think we made a really cool record, and I'm very proud of it. Um, but I also am just the experience of making the record and the experience of these friendships that have been sustained through this, and people that have connected with it, and just using it as a touchstone to just have a cool life. You know,
Hmm.
is something that like I'm very grateful for. And you know, it's that thing of someone's on their deathbed. They're not going to say, "Oh, I wish I would have worked more." You know, I'm going to be like, I'm so glad I had these friendships and these experiences. I don't think I'm going to be like, man, wasn't that a cool record that we got to number one? You know, like I don't know. That doesn't seem like the
Yeah.
payoff to me. You know,
Hmm.
and I think that's an old story of
Hmm.
people being like achievements and ambition are cool and fine, but at the end of the day, you want to feel and share love and have a rich life experience. You know, I've often thought that like I love music, I love art. It's what I want to do with my life, but those two things are like they're like an extension of life, or they're a way to like make life better, or to connect you with other people, or to facilitate
Mm.
what is important in life. Like it's not life. You know, it's like the map
Mhm.
is not the territory kind of a thing. And I think about that a lot. Like the important things are sharing love and hanging out with your kid and
Yeah.
being friends. You know.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of recurring motifs in your work, in your art and your music: birds, suns, the flowers, lanky people with these long arms and fingers, and snakes and the universe, and basically nature and our connection to it. And just like what you're talking about, there's this spoken word portion of Wish I Was Born an Animal where you say, it felt good.
It felt good just to listen, just to look, just to be alive, just to be among the breathing, reeling of the world. The breathing, reeling of the world.
I guess that kind of sums up what you were saying right there. Is that just kind of the key to all of your work?
I mean, thanks, man, for listening. You know, um, I think so. You know, and I made up those words, dude, 25 years ago or
Hmm.
something.
Okay.
Um, and when I brought that
Wow.
music to the recording thing, that bridge there, or I don't know what it,
Hmm.
I don't know what that portion is called.
I I don't
Um,
know what you call this.
uh, it was originally like sung, and I sung it like hard, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Amelia was like, "Why don't you just say it?" You know, that was like
Mm-hmm.
her thing, and it's awesome. It's hard, yeah. It's I love it like that, you know. And I think that now that you're presenting it to me, I think maybe yeah, I could see that as a line through most of the things that I
Mm-hmm.
make or do is like I don't know to be aware of the experience maybe or to to be in the minuteness of it when you can, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that's feels impossible most of the time.
Nathaniel, thank you so much. This has really been
Oh
wonderful
man,
talking to you.
I really appreciate you inviting me. It's been really cool. Thank you.
Thank you to Nathaniel for being on the show with me today, and also to you for listening. To see more of his art, check out nathanielrussell.com. And if you're in the Santa Cruz area on April 4th, be sure to swing by Minnow Arts for the closing reception of Foot Chorus. Thanks again, and until next time, take care.